We're really excited about this show. We're a pretty young company, but we're exclusively focused on this space. So when we saw the opportunity to have a good size impact on a show like this, we decided to take our shot. So I'm just going to introduce the company a little bit and then give you some background on how we look at the industry and how and why we're crafting our technology. But VideoAmp is an advanced TV platform. We are just turned 2 years old last week, so a really young company, but we're making some big moves and making strides in really trying to help craft some solutions for the industry that are purely software driven. So in the 2 years, we've raised $17 million. We have locations across the US, and we're going to be opening in Europe next week. Our largest investor in our Series A round is RTL, which is a division of Bertelsmann Group. It's a television broadcast entity in Europe. So today, I wanted to give a little bit of a background on the obvious, right? This is why we're all here. The idea of the three networks that we just heard about, being able to reach a mass audience on a weekly basis has given way to a lot of fragmentation and choice. And the fragmentation and choice helps create a lot of chaos, right? And then within that chaos, you start to think about what is it that is going to ultimately make things more seamless. And there's a lot of reasons why digital and TV have often been on separate sides of the agency world, separate sides from the content and distribution side of the world. But because of the ubiquity of different kinds of devices, it's now time where a lot of these once siloed universes are starting to come together in a more cohesive fashion. So, TV viewership today is definitely changing, right? And I think this is one of the themes that we'll probably see from a lot of the different speakers. You read about, the death of TV very rapidly. It's just growing off of different screens and different formats. So television, or it's linear or it's on demand, it doesn't really matter, right? It's about the quality of content. And I think that's the other thing that is driving these kinds of numbers, is that there is a high demand for premium quality content and choice. And these kinds of statistics just show that. This is this Game of Thrones analogy, and we talked about this a lot when we were raising our funding, is that because of that chaos and because of the fact that the digital behemoths, right, like Facebook and Google, which I think dominate 80% of all digital advertising revenue, they're looking at what's the biggest pot of ad revenue that they don't yet control, and that's television. So at the same time, you have fortifications happening with the cable providers. If I could adjust this image a little bit more, you would see Comcast building a nation and Verizon building a nation. And it's because this ubiquity of content and the accessibility of data is really causing a lot of people to sort of figure out how this territory is going to be divided up. And just taking a look at who's in the room, who the sponsors are here today, I think this small yet influential group is really focused on how do you work more cohesively, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the Game of Thrones. But in a world where there's often a zero-sum game being played, it's good to understand the motivations and the capabilities of all of the various players in the room. So does that mean that, this is a wartime or a peacetime effort? In a lot of ways, you would look at the aggressive moves in the industry, whether it's, Apple secretly promoting ad blocking or not so secretly, a lot of M&A activity that's often happening, pretty rash, or, Google cutting off YouTube from the open exchange, Facebook in essence closing down its RTB acquisitions, kind of erasing the castle walls, if you will. It's hard to know, right? So I think the best thing we can do is be good stewards of the industry and look to partner and work smartly together. So on to more happy thoughts, but exponential OTT growth. I think that's one of the reasons why we're all here today over the next couple of days, is to explore all of the different pillars of what advanced TV is. And rather than try to talk about it all in the 20 minutes that we have, I know that it's going to be covered in its entirety throughout the day. But these kinds of statistics are really, I think, painting the picture for why what was once sort of a a nice to have on an ad campaign or a potential distribution point for a programmer. It's really now something that is entirely mainstream. When you take a look at, 65% of all households have at least one streaming device in the home. I think that says it all. I mean, obviously, these kinds of devices give you that accessibility and choice in an on-demand way. And it's not just things that are on demand. There's a lot of live streaming happening via OTT devices, right? I mean, we were at dinner last night and I was missing the Golden State game, and so I was streaming it on my phone, and people at the table were watching it, and we were keeping track of the ad breaks and what was happening. And there's just a lot of things that are even happening live in an on-demand way. It's not just push play for catch-up TV from the last 2 years. It's stuff that's happening right now, right? There's live news stations that stream onto Roku now, so it's an entirely new. Frank Underwood doesn't take ads, so how can we take advantage of all of the various programmers that are now creating apps and distributing in more aggressive ways onto OTT? Because if you take a look, if the biggest players on OTT are Amazon and Netflix and Hulu, only Hulu has ads and part of its load depending MVPDs, if you will, come online tied to advertising and so on. What's holding historically? You have an Xbox. How do you? It hasn't been a very unified. Is hard. Buying television for 50. Just these are search terms. People are used to being able to target, but this hasn't been a medium that was really open for targeting. Then there's this idea of, is this TV or digital, right? When you look at things like OTT and video on demand, it's often like that fly ball between center and left. Is it television? Is it digital? Is it yours? Is it mine? And that creates this sort of uncertainty. But as a market that's grappling on the digital side with things like, are bots looking at your ads? I think it's pretty obvious that, something that is unskippable on the biggest screen in your TV being distributed by a major programmer who's been in business for 30 years, that's a lot like TV, so why should not be treating it that way? And buying done on a large I/O basis, that really goes along with the first piece of this, which is if it's fragmented and you have to do things all very siloed, it's hard to scale. It's hard to get large campaigns to be able to operate efficiently. So bridging TV and digital, I think we heard from MediaPost that's why we're all here. And being able to do that, it really starts with things around data, right? I'm a big Peter Thiel fan. This is a great book, and his notion of 0 to 1, going from 1 to 100 typewriters is horizontal process, but vertical process is going from typewriters to word processing. And that's really what the industry, I think, right now is trying to gear up to do, is to not just replicate models that either worked on television or worked on digital, but what's the new model around this notion of advanced TV, and how are we going to be able to execute that? We look at things in a stackable way, so rather than sort of erecting the next castle wall, but our castle will be much smaller, right, as a young company, we're taking an approach that is much more modular. So a software-first approach makes it a lot easier to partner in the ecosystem. And so, whether that is around planning or packaging on the supply side, being able to link TV data to digital data, reporting, right? Just being able to take, if there's advertisers here that have run addressable campaigns from multiple MSOs, it's really hard to get a consolidated view of reporting. And it's very difficult to be able to roll it up to a single currency. So these are all things that the industry is starting to come together and figure out how they want to proceed. But we're a strong believer in a company that it doesn't pay to build something that can only be working within your own confines. We believe in creating sort of more of an ecosystem approach around our software and exposing everything via APIs that can really be extended upon by partners and customers. So, the notion of what makes a unified look at data, you would look at all of the various signals. This is a little bit hard to read, I can see, but how can you take a look at what's happening on desktop, on mobile, smart TV data coming from technologies like ACR, all of these various signals, if you will, can now, and they may be perfect in the next year or 2 years, but email, my Facebook, that's pretty good. Data for everyone else, not those guys, a little bit more scarce, and it doesn't necessarily scale to full screen, but we can combine that very fast to look at what a cross-screen identification is like, and use probabilistic modeling, and you can start to really understand how data helps understand individual behaviors across devices. And a lot of companies are working in an open way. From Oracle, and we're working with them, and they've got a great identity graph and a lot of different solutions. And probabilistic modeling can really help the whole industry understand behavior a little bit more. And then where some people reduce their consumption, maybe when it was a cable operator or collector of television data or a programmer, you have a very good idea of what people are actually watching, and that matters. Being able to understand what ads people have been exposed to on television and digital frequency, right? For a long time because it's hard to open a number. So I here creating indexes, combines the data, and starts to page that helps you really analyze this. So we are looking at how to take the best parts of digital targeting and create data that can be used later on an environment, and that becomes a foundation potential for a cross-screen plan. And then you got to figure out what to apply, right? There's a quick snap of who's in the marketplace right now, all the different types of industry that they represent. And we can talk more about this off, but it shows how much effort has to be put into this. And you look at these guys, and these are all layers of technology. You still have to have regulation. We're going to talk a little bit about partnership with Fruno, but Larry's in the room here, and he represents so having a partnership with Fruno doesn't you can just automatically have access to everything. You have to really sort of figure out how to help with all the players in the ecosystem, not just the tech players, but people who actually own the audiences and distribute the content. So when you can combine TV and digital targeting, you do some interesting things. If you want to take a look at, I've been doing this a lot this week, if you took a look at the entire viewing audience of the playoffs over the last week, and you could actually create an index by combining something from Experian, or maybe a first-party data set from Polk around auto ownership. So if you could take NVA viewership plus in-market for an SUV and create that now as a really cool new super segment that could use as a plan across either television, digital, or a combination of it, that's pretty interesting, right? And those are all things that even 2 years ago seemed like far-fetched. It's now possible. And these types of different scenarios of indexing, sequencing, competitive conquesting, if you're Ford and unfortunately Cadillac had the exclusive on the NBA playoffs, maybe you can create a segment off of that viewership and find those people on mobile devices, or find those people on OTT. And those types of it's the ad and MSOs in the US and increasingly growing in Europe. They made an acquisition a week and a half ago of Sticky Ads, which is a French programmatic SSP. So a lot of things that they're going to be providing for the supply side. And one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was do something that really helped open up OTT. So pivoting back a little bit to the beginning of the presentation, that some of those issues with OTT can now start to come together in a way that makes it more amenable to scale. So growing your share of wallet. If you were a supplier, if you will, and you get a certain amount of auto money from this set of advertisers, if you now have these new audiences being viewed on OTT devices, you can now grow that share of wallet by monetizing those a little bit more effectively. Targeting, like advanced TV quality targeting available like we just talked about in these environments. And then creating the market for precision TV dollars. This is something, in a lot of our conversations with agency partners, they're the progressive thinking agencies are taking some money from digital, taking some money from television, and putting it in this bucket called precision TV, and saying, if you can apply data and you can buy across any of those screens that we've been talking about, does that make something more interesting for advertisers to try to see what's working? So from that perspective, you can now do this notion of full episode player targeting across all of these different devices. Again, this is a lot of detail, but being able to target show level or app level across all OTT devices and have reporting that is pretty interesting, right? I mean, think of being able to buy television, because you are in essence buying television, it's just being the geography of engagement, right? And so let's say some of these ads are running with a overlay, an engagement overlay, and now you can say, well, I delivered these many impressions, to the southeast part of the United States, and X% of the people in Florida engage with that ad. Well, what is it about that audience in Florida that is more engaging to your TV ad than the audiences in New York? You can start to look at all these different things in a reporting standpoint now. So platform that's self-serve, we think is really important, because a lot of the industry is moving towards software that can be used in this way. Ultimately, what's new and important about all of the content is highly sold out. And I think it goes back to exaggerating the demise of the traditional industry. I think the demand for premium content is only rising. And therefore, why are we not doing a better job of creating an industry around it? Highly viewable inventory, said that earlier about the lack of quality content in the sort of open marketplace for video. I mean, the truth is it's not really all that much video, and everyone is finally starting to realize that. So you really want to be in well-lit environments that you trust, and why not, again, buy the biggest screen in the house? Automation isn't going away. When you call it programmatic, you call it automation. Automation is a less threatening word, I guess. A lot of people view programmatic as, I'm bidding, and bidding is going down. But as we've seen, the quality and demand for premium content is only going up. And the bar is being raised because Amazon is spending $2 billion on creating content. That's going to raise the quality bar for the whole industry. So for the ad-supported component of it, it's going to actually keep giving consumers what they want, which is higher quality content. But automating the process of being able to advertise and hit scale there is going to only help the entire parts of the ecosystem. So, reaching a total video audience, that's ultimately, and I think that's sort of in the description of this session. If you take a look at it, it's, over the top on devices. So again, these are on-demand environments. Over the top on television. This is your Roku, this is your Xbox, this is PlayStation 4. And then there's linear television and set-top box video on demand. Really all of these different screens and formats are required to do what's called total video planning. This is another concept that I started to hear about a lot at CES this year, in some meetings that we had with very large brands and agency partners. They're looking at this problem of, all right, I'm launching a new product. It really needs to reach a younger, more influential audience. We haven't been able to reach the GRPs to do that. We want to take $100 million and plan it across all the environments where this audience is watching content, and we want to measure reach and frequency. Is that possible? Quite honestly, it's not possible to do at the precision today that I think everybody wants, but I think big steps have been taken, and hopefully in the next couple of days, we all get a chance to learn a little bit more. Thanks.
Jay, thank you. Let's see, we have maybe a minute here. Wait, before Jay gets off. Well, actually, are you going to be here for the duration, right?
I am, yes.
Okay, and you have a team. I know Rebecca's here.
Right, and then these two up front as
these
well.
people right here. Did you say that already? Okay, maybe you did. But
I did not, but
all right.
Allison and Jessica are also here.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for kicking things off for us today. I mean, it was a nice